Hello and welcome back to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Mark Etheridge. Our season preview series rolls on.
Yeah.
Already out for Vanderbilt, Texas A&M episodes, so go listen to those if you have not already done so. Today, we're going to talk about the Texas Longhorns, a team that exceeded every regular season expectation last year.
No doubt.
I just looked at this the other day. We had them ranked 19th in the preseason, and at the time felt that was, I mean, even in hindsight, I think it's fair. We just didn't quite know what to expect, and a lot of things went right in the first year of Jim Schlossnagle's tenure in Austin. They end up, high seed in the NCAA tournament, lose at home to UTSA. I think unlike some other teams we might talk about that lost at home in the postseason, I think that one feels among the more excusable. Just a terrible draw to get UTSA, a team that was really good last year, was really old, and oh, by the way, had played Texas in the regular season.
Yeah.
There was no scare factor there for UTSA. So just a tough draw there, which is not to excuse it. I think if you're Texas, that's a regional you got to win. But
yeah,
I do think it is perhaps a little more understandable than some others, at least. But I will start the conversation with this, Mark, that I don't think anyone thinks that the team we saw last year is going to end up being among the more talented Jim Schlossnagle Texas teams whenever his tenure at Texas ends.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to look at 2025 as being one of the more talented versions of it. And yet that was a team that, had they ended up in Omaha, no one would have batted an eyelash at it, because that's the quality of the team that they put on the field. I mean, they won the daggum SEC, right? Like that, you don't do that by accident. And so I say that to say, like, I think that's got to send a little bit of a chill up the spines of the rest of the SEC, that a team that was talented, I'm not trying to short them, but a team that was talented but probably won't be as talented as some of the teams to come under this coaching staff, got that close to being, being a team that could win a national title. And so it just feels like if that's the jumping off point for this era of Texas baseball, that's a really, really good place to start.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say Texas is building, and that's weird to say.
Yeah,
because they did win the regular season in the toughest conference that we've ever seen. So I feel like year two, now that the returnees have had more time in the system, also with Max Weiner, pitching coach, more time under his tutelage, then a year of actually getting to recruit your own players to Texas instead of taking, what the prior staff had. I mean, this is a team that on paper looks very talented, looks as talented probably as any that you want to stack it against. The question is going to be finding the right players for the right roles, especially on the mound, because there are plenty to pick from, and trying to navigate between the guys who pitched last year because they were the best available versus one and how good are they with another year in the system versus some high impact newcomers who are probably more talented, but how ready are they? And I think that for me will be fascinating figuring that out, because I don't think it's not like you're picking between two bad options. You're probably picking between two really good options, but to maximize where you want to be, not just to be better in March, but to be better so you can be better for the postseason, trying to figure all that out. I think that is what I'm looking for when I evaluate Texas right now.
Yeah, I think on the mound you could see that with, guys like Ruger Riojas and Max Grubbs, who were really important pieces of last year's team, and they will be again, to be clear, but it just feels like maybe those guys will be like a notch or two further down the pecking order, which tells you that the depth has gotten a lot better. Because I don't say that to short those guys, but I think ideally they would not be quite as prominent as they were last year, where it felt like those two guys were as important as anybody except Dylan Volantis on that pitching staff. And speaking of Volantis, he's fascinating for me because they're going to try to move him to the rotation. Actually, they're not going to try to move him. They are going to move him to the rotation. They will see how it goes.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's betting against him being excellent in that role. I think that would be silly to bet against him, but these things aren't automatic. I think we saw that with Gabe Gackle at Arkansas last year, where they move him to the rotation because it's elite stuff, and you got to see if you can make that work. And it was fine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't, oh my gosh, we got to do something else. But eventually Arkansas did move him back to the bullpen, and he was just a lot more comfortable for whatever reason. Was a lot more comfortable in that role. And then, so I do think we have to leave the door open that could be the case with Volantis, that it's good, but not great. But ultimately we have to decide between, do we want to average to above average SEC starter, or do we want an above average to elite bullpen guy? And that's a decision unless Volantis immediately goes to rotation, is just awesome, which again is on the table. Yeah. But if it's something in between, there will be an interesting decision to be made, because again, these things aren't necessarily automatic.
Yeah. I mean, he has a starter's arsenal. It's 4 pitches.
He does.
And it's, I think they're all starter quality, where you get you through a lineup a few times. The question for me is durability, right? How are you able to do this, and get to 90 pitches and hold your stuff, and then turn around and again and do it the following week and the following week and carry that through a long stretch against some really good lineup? I think that's always the question when you have a guy who hasn't done it at this level. How does it carry through? I think the other part that's fascinating is how you use some of these. You mentioned, Max Grubbs, Ruger Riojas. What is their role? Do they slide down? Do they come up? And what about like a Luke Harrison, who was really effective, but the stuff is not going to blow you away. That's why he's still at Texas and not pro ball. But he was such a good pitcher last year, just able to maneuver and work through a lineup. And then a guy like Jason Flores, who had one of their best falls from all indication. He's a freshman, had some moments last year, but wasn't consistent. Maybe wasn't ready, and certainly looks like he's improved. What is his role? And then you've got freshmen like Michael Winter and Brett Crossland and some of these really highly touted arms that are going to come in, who are they're the prospect guys. How quickly do they acclimate to facing SEC hitters, and what roles do they have? So many pieces to plug and play. It's going to be for me, that's going to be one of the more fun things to watch for Texas.
Yeah, I'm with you. Another guy to mention is Thomas Burns, who
absolutely.
Like
3 digits.
Last year had some moments when he was high leverage, but for the most part was not really necessarily one of their high leverage guys. But he's the stuff is certainly high leverage. I mean, it's up to 100, right? I mean, like you can't teach that. And so I think he's a guy where because of the depth, your season is not going to get sidetracked if he's not the guy you're hoping he is. But if he is the guy you're hoping he is, he's a real weapon, because the stuff is it's up to 100 miles an hour, 20 plus inches of IBB, cutter, slider, curveball, changeup. Like it's just a kitchen sink approach with elite level stuff and metrics. And so I think his is a name as well that we ought to mention. As we look at the lineup, Mark, I think the top 5 or 6 in this lineup, I feel really, really good about. And there's some questions kind of with the rest of it, right. But 2 of the guys I think that make me feel best about this lineup are a couple of transfers: Carson Tinney, the catcher from Notre Dame, and then Aiden Robbins from Seton Hall. And for different reasons, Carson Tinney, it's like 70 grade raw power. He's a real Iron Man behind the plate. If he needs to catch 56 games, he can catch 56 games. For his sake, I hope he doesn't catch 56 games, but he could. So there's that. And then Aiden Robbins is a guy who he's one of those hitters that I just don't think the level of pitching and competition matters to him. I just think whatever level you put him at, he's just going to hit. So whether that's the Big East with, some good pitching, some bad pitching, or with the SEC where it's going to be good pitching every single weekend, I think the dude is just going to hit. Like he's just got that feel to hit. And, we'll see what the rest of it is. Defensively, he's a good runner. So like, does he steal some bases? We'll see. But I just think they just want him to go up there and take 4 good at-bats a game. And he's going to get 1 or 2 hits every day, basically. And that's what they're asking for from him. So they don't need him to do some of those other things, but he does have other tools. It's just a matter of how much they're needed when it's just, hey, they just need this guy to go up there and hit.
Yeah, two very exciting transfers to come in, and I mean they're going to probably be like your 3 and 4 hole hitters, and you're just hitting the portal, getting an immediate upgrade there. I think another interesting piece for me is Adrian Rodriguez, who they're going to give a shot to play shortstop, and he was third base, DH kind of guy last year, had some injuries, just wasn't really where they wanted to be physically. But certainly with the bat, he was good. He hit 300 as a freshman. Looking at him this year, what does that look like? I think he's going to go back to switch hitting, which is what he did before he was injured. It's a really intriguing prospect, and if he can stick at shortstop, that it just elevates it even more, and also fills a gap. I mean, Jalen Flores was a really good player there, shortstop. He's gone, so now. There's a hole, and is A-Rod the guy that's going to do it? I think the other one to point out, we saw flashes of Jonah Williams, the football player, a year ago, come in and just energize the team. What is his role? He's still a member of the football team, so there's going to be some splitting time there. What's his availability like, especially during spring practice? And then can he get enough reps to make an even bigger impact this year? Because last year he was more of a bit player. He had his moments, but this year he has a chance to really be, part of that, part of the starting 9 every day. And if he's not, then who steps in? Is it a freshman like Anthony Pack Jr. is a really highly regarded prospect? Can he step in? Is he ready as a freshman? It's a big ask. Or does somebody else step in and fill that spot?
I think there's something. I'm glad you brought up the Adrian Rodriguez piece of it, because I think there's a second level of this conversation where if he's at shortstop, it means that Timo Becerra, the transfer from Stanford, is not at shortstop, and he tends to be a more kind of like defense-oriented guy. So if he's in the lineup, he's kind of a bat to ball, small ball, inside game type of guy, and he moves to third base if Rodriguez is at shortstop, and I just don't know that Becerra is going to hit enough at third base to be comfortable, right? Because he is more of a contact-oriented guy. And look, if A-Rod is a monster at shortstop, like maybe it doesn't matter as much, but I do wonder if there's a situation where
flip them.
You flip them, and so the glove is at shortstop, or like Josh Livingston's a transfer from Wichita State who can play a little bit of third base. Casey Borba, is a guy who could play some third base, and then you could move, Livingston elsewhere. Like there are some options here to where if one of two things happens, either Adrian Rodriguez turns out to not quite be ready for shortstop, you could move him off, move Becerra there, have him at third base. That's an option. Or if Becerra doesn't hit enough, there are other third basemen available, and then Becerra becomes maybe a late game replacement. Maybe late in games you slide A-Rod to third and you put Becerra in at shortstop to protect the lead. Like that's obviously on the table as well. So they do. That is a big question. Like, how is it going to look at shortstop? But I do feel good from a Texas standpoint that if it doesn't go exactly like they're looking for it, like they're not going to have to stick with it just for the sake of sticking with it.
Yeah. And I do think that's one of the positions that they have some depth. I think if I'm looking to nitpick, comparing them to, some of the other teams that are going to be picked near where Texas is, there's not that level of position depth. There's not that 15 to 18 guys that you could see getting a ton of playing time. You don't need that many, but it is nice to have that to draw from, especially if you have injuries or something like that. So I think for me, Texas, the top of the lineup looks really strong. The whole pitching staff looks really strong with lots of options from a rotation standpoint, back end, midweek, you name it. The questions I would have for them would be the back end of the lineup and then positional depth. Is that enough? And I mean, frankly, it looks from that standpoint, it looks kind of similar to last year. Really strong top of the lineup. The back end wasn't quite as good. But I do feel like Jim Schlossnagle was one of the best hitting teachers in the game. I think they're going to, with that approach where they take a lot of pitches and make pitchers work and hit mistakes, I think they'll be able to get the most out of this group. And as a result, they're going to be in the thick of the whole thing once again.
100% agree. And I think that's the crux of it to me, is that, if the guys that we expect to be big parts of the lineup do their thing, the bottom half of the lineup makes some strides as time goes on. And then, that pitching staff led by Max Wiener, one of the best pitching coaches out there doing it.
Yeah.
I think if we expect that group to be deeper, have better high end stuff, all of it, it does take some pressure off the lineup, that they're not going to have to do quite as much. And to me, that's the confluence of events that sets Texas up best for success. And that's just, the lineup, the dudes in the lineup do dude things. And then the pitching staff proves that it's a lot deeper than it was, and allows them to maybe mix and match a little bit more. To me, that feels like the sweet spot for what Texas is looking to accomplish in 2026.
Yeah. And early on in the year, there's a really fun matchup that they go to the Houston, the Houston College Classic. And they're going to get Coastal Carolina on a Friday night. You could have Dylan Volantis and Cam Flukie. That would be a lot of fun. And I love those kind of early games. So you get a feel for what Texas is going to look like before conference play starts, because everybody has hard games in conference play. But to have a showcase kind of game like that early in the year only better prepares you as you head into the grind.
Yeah, 100%. Looking forward to seeing it. Certainly, we have not done as we record this, have not done our top 25 deliberations. By the time you hear this, you will have, you will know where we have them, but spoiler alert, they're going to be right up there with the teams that are going to be expected to make some deep runs. So looking forward to seeing what it looks like on the field. And that is going to do it for this edition of the Highway to Hoover podcast, a production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. Thanks for listening in on this edition of our preview podcast series. We have Vanderbilt already done. Texas A&M is done. Obviously, Texas now done. We'll move on to Tennessee and then make our way through the alphabet backwards to the rest of the SEC. By the time it's all said and done, we will have 16 preview episodes, one for each team. Very much looking forward to completing that series, because I don't know about you, Mark, but I feel like it gives me a much clearer idea by the time we've talked it all out. I tend to have a clearer idea of how I feel about a team. So it's a learning experience for us as much as it is the listener, to be quite frank. Thank you again, Mark, for joining me as always. And thank you, listeners, for listening.